I'm the field crop entomologist, assistant professor in extension specialist, located at Scottsbluff at the P&O Research Extension Education Center. So today we're switching gear to talk about some insects. I will have about 20 minutes for my session, and then for the first part, I will talk a little bit about two potential insect pests. They don't always they're not always a problem, but they can be. That will be the Mexican bean beetle and lygus bug. And then for the later part of my presentation, I would like to provide some updates on the research we have been doing on thrips in dry beef for the past 2 years almost. And then after my presentation, Samantha will talk more about Western beak worm, which is another important insect pest in beans. So starting off, an insect that can cause this type of damage. So a lot of defoliation and then a lot of holes. That will be the Mexican bean beetles. So the adults of those beetles, they look a lot like lady beetles, which are natural enemies, the good guys. So you can say that they're the bad lady beetles. And so the adults, the main thing is they're usually this orange or yellow colors, and they don't have any dots on their thorax. That's kind of how you tell apart whether they're lady beetles, natural enemies, or Mexican bean beetle. And their eggs usually is underneath of the leaves, and then the larvae kind of it will stand out if it's in the field. They just kind of a very hairy looking yellow larva and then pupa. So they're defoliating pests. So if they become a problem in driving fields, they can eat a lot of leaves, and of course will reduce photosynthesis, desiccation of the plants, and they can be in beans, soybeans. In fact, 2 or 3 decades ago, it used to be a huge problem on the East Coast for soybean industry, but after some time, potentially because of the release of natural enemies, they just crashed their population and they no longer is a problem. But still, once in a while, we'll see them. I think this year, and especially last year, in some of our plots, we did find them in especially some certain varieties. It seems to be more attractive to them. And they thrive under moist conditions. However, the good thing is bean plants, they can actually tolerate quite a bit of defoliation. So if you see them, just don't panic at the first moment, because beans can tolerate at least 20% defoliation. So not until that reach that threshold, we usually don't have to worry about it. So here's more pictures for the type of damage they can cause. So they basically feed between the lines of the leaves. So they'll cause those spheroidization and the window pane pattern. And they grow pretty fast, so they can have up to 3 generations per year. And then they can not only feed on the leaves, but also possum. Definitely can be a serious issue if their population build up in a bean field. So for management, there are actually quite a bit of the predators if it's in a pretty healthy ecosystem. Some predators will go after them, including some stink bugs, will prey on both larvae and adults. And there's also some parasitoids that are just around, or you can actually release them as a control method. And if it gets to a point that you're really worried about it and considering chemical control, there's some thresholds that to help with making that decision. And it depends on the growth stage of the plant. So if it's before blooming in the vegetative stages, the bean plants can actually tolerate up to 35% of defoliation until we really have to consider treating them. But after blooming, the threshold is lower to 15%. Okay, I think that's all I have for this test. Any question? Okay. Right. So the next one, this is an insect that has a piercing sucking mouth part, so can cause this type of just like like piercing damage on pods. Those are the tarnish plant bugs, also known as ligus bugs. So they feed by their mouth part with needle-like. So how they feed is they just insert their mouth part into the plant and then remove the liquid, but also create some basically toxic that will sometimes like get some burns of the plant as a damage. And they're very polyphagous, meaning that they feed on a lot of different plants, including crops and weed species. And among all, alfalfa is their preferred host. So you usually see a lot of them in alfalfa fields. But like the crops I listed here that's relevant to our region are all their hosts. And they like the hot and dry weather, and so that condition usually is prone to like higher, like can have them like build up higher population. Oh, and another thing is they have quite, so they can look quite different depending on the species, but they're all ligus bugs in this genus. So mostly we look for this V shape, like kind of a shell shape to recognize this in the field. So ligus, they can feed on all different parts of bean plants. If they feed on the upper stem, it can cause the end trifoliate to wilt. If they feed on the flower or like the pin pods, it will cause abortion of the flower. And if it's later feeding on the pods, it could cause malformation of the pods or dimpling and pitting. And the entry they caused could actually make things worse, like create opening for secondary pathogen infection. So for management, again, going back to natural enemies, if they're just there, not like very high level, and if it's a relatively healthy ecosystem, natural enemies usually will take care of them, keep them at a pretty not threatening level in the field. And then weed control will be helpful for this path as well. Again, going back to they have a really wide host range. So if you control those, their host, pigweed, radish, mustard, you can reduce the overall population of this ligus bugs in the environment or in the region. And if you think that if you think that the population is getting worse, and there's actually you can actually use a sweet net to monitor them every week to determine their densities, and then you want to do at least 5 to 10 sleeps every time, and at least 4 to 6 area in the whole field to get an accurate estimation of the density. And then there's thresholds to help with making a chemical control decision. And this will depend on the bean types. For black-eyed peas, the threshold is lower. That would be 0.5 to 1, depending on the stage. And then for the rest of the classes of beans, it's 1 to 1.5. Okay. I think that's all I have for ligus. Any questions on this?
What chemical would you, if we did need chemical, what chemical would be the ligus or Mexican be available?
That's a very good question. I am not sure actually, but I would think most of the like common like pyrethroids probably will work, but definitely check the labels. I don't have experience that I really need to like I increase about this, but yeah, I'm pretty sure some of the pyrethroids will take care of it. Yeah. But again, going back, yeah, because those are not like always a problem, so we don't want to use chemicals unless it's necessary. So that's why those thresholds are really helpful in that sense. Okay. All right. Moving on. The the cupping damage caused by thrips. So thrips are tiny insects. They're just about like maybe 2 millimeters long, but they are basically everywhere just because they get into a lot of flowers. They will be in your gardens, in your yard, but in like in our bean production, usually they will immigrate from alternate hosts in the early in the spring, either from wheat, alfalfa, or other wheat species. Um, and usually it's during the year that has like warm and dry spring, it tends to have a more problem with thrips population build up. Um, and thrips are considered perceived pest in driving because they've been around, they're always in the field, but actually their impact, bean growth and economic impact is largely unknown. That's mainly the reason why I want to look into this test and see what whether they're what basically what they're doing to the crop and whether it's harmful enough for us to take action. Although they're perceived as, I heard that I was told that seed treatment and foliar spray is not um, it's pretty common, especially in this part of the state, southwestern part. To use those to for thrips as a concern or preventative method. So this is a picture of adult thrips and immatures. They're just like very tiny, and if you flip the leaves, especially with a heavy infestation, that's what it would look like. So more about their injuries on beans. So they also feed by puncturing leaves and removing cell content. That's how they make those silvery scars on the leaf tissues, and also causing those downward cupping in dry beans, especially in the early seedling stages. But they can also feed on flowers and pod, causing abortion, and this is just an example of the other type of damage that they can cause is by when they lay their eggs, they insert their ovipositor, so it will cause this type of wound. So starting last year, we started a research trial. We wanted to look at different bean varieties and seed treatments, the simethicone seed treatment cruiser, and trying to see their effect on thrips population. And so last year was our first year doing this, and this year we're repeating this same trial in Scottsbluff. So looking at their population dynamics throughout the season, first thing we confirm is that they're all around, all year round, like throughout the season, we were able to capture them. And with the peak population being kind of around the flowering stages, and that's when we found the most number of them. And just to orient you on this graph, we have the dates, and then we have days after planting, those red numbers, and then we're looking at the number of thrips per day per card, because we use those yellow sticky cards to monitor them. And then the different color of lines just representing different bean varieties. And I do want to point out that around 30 days after planting is usually where you would see those downward cupping symptoms in the field. And that's usually when a foliar spray will be put out to control or to control thrips. And then also just in general, seed treatment usually will last in the field or in the soil like their efficacy will last in 30 days. So that's kind of the windows that we're predicting seed treatment will have any effect on thrips. But yeah, okay. And when we look at different varieties, we did see some variations among the variety we tested, that there's definitely some differences of their population. So again, we're looking at the number of thrips. Here the unit is gram per gram plant biomass. And what we found is one of the black bean varieties has the highest number of thrips. And the lowest was one of the pinto beans. So I guess the takeaway from this is there's definitely some variations among the varieties, that some might attract more thrips than the other. And another interesting thing is that we also collect flower samples, and the results, it's a little bit different, that we actually found more thrips in this light red kidney variety that has more thrips than the others. And we're suspecting that it was because of the color of the flower, that so this rosy variety has a light pink flower, and that could be a key factor that's it's more attractive to thrips. And then when we look at the seed treatment effect, unfortunately, and a little surprising that we did not see any differences. So here we have all the different varieties on this x-axis, and we're looking at the number of thrips. And the orange bars are the seed treated beans, and then the blue ones are the non-treated. But overall, we don't see any significant differences. So basically, we did not see any effect of seed treatment on thrips numbers. So this really kind of lead to this very important question that we keep asking: are insecticide effective against thrips? And because we want to try to answer, really look into this question, we did a few more trials and study this year. And for seed treatment, we want to know how long does the active ingredients actually last in the bean plants once it's planted. So after planting this year, again, we used this seed treatment Cruiser Max Vibrance, and then 10 through 31 days after planting, we went out and collect those leaf samples, and then we send them to Columbia Lab, which is in Oregon, to test the residual active ingredient in those leaves. And so in this graph here, we have the simethicone, which is the active ingredient concentration in ppm. And what we found is, 10 days after planting, there's quite a bit of the residual concentration of that active ingredient, but it dramatically dropped just like after 2 weeks after planting. And then at 24 days, there's basically non-detectable of that active ingredient in leaves, which means that so whatever it's in the leaves, it's what thrips can be exposed to when they feed. So so this is kind of confirming that the residual window for seed treatment it's pretty short, probably around 20 days max. And then we're also interested to see like how exactly is the effect of those seed treatment on thrips mortalities. So for that, my master student Arzu did some lab bioassay using the thrips that we rear in the lab, and then again every after starting about 10 days after planting, we went out to collect leaves from the field, and then she'll put it in the little petri dish, and then for each leaf or each cage, we'll release 10 thrips, and then after 48 hours, we'll come back and then see how many are dead and how many are alive, and to get the mortality. And something we found earlier is that though we're dealing with two species of thrips. Those are the two dominant species that we found in dry beans. And so Arthur did this bioassay for both species. So the graph here is showing, again, on the x-axis, we have days after planting, and then on the y-axis, we're looking at the mortality. So, and the blue lines are the non-treated, and the orange is the treated. So first things stand out was, again, it's kind of corresponding to the active ingredient concentration result that earlier we see a more higher mortality to both species, onion thrips and western flower thrips, but then the effects kind of declining throughout time, and I guess another kind of important point that stand out was we noticed that the big difference between the mortality between those two species is basically telling us that onion thrips is more susceptible to this active ingredient amethoctane, because for this species of thrips, the highest mortality is not even reaching 30%. So this is something we definitely need to look into more, because we know both species are in the field, and if they have different susceptibility to certain insecticides, that's definitely something we want to make sure that we're using the right product for the species we're dealing with. So yeah, again, so maybe around 30 days, especially, so it works better for onion thrips, but not so much for western flower thrips. And yeah, and basically we don't see any significant effect after maybe 20, definitely 30 days. After 30 days, it's just not causing them death. So in addition to seed treatment, we also are curious about foliar spray, because we know this is another tool that growers use, especially if they see those cupping that damage in the field. So we want to also look at different insecticide treatments and their effect on thrips abundance. So we conducted another field trial this year in Scottsbluff and Mitchell. So in this trial, we included 4 different treatments. We have non-treated control. We have a treatment that's only seed treatment. And then another one is only foliar spray. And the fourth one is the combination of seed treatment and foliar. So basically, we want to see if among those different treatments, will we see different numbers of thrips. So it's a big graph, but I'll walk you through it again. On the y-axis, we have the timeline from 23 to 58 days after planting. And then on the y-axis here, we're looking at the number of thrips per plant. So for the first 2 weeks, since the foliar spray has not been applied, basically we're just looking at the effect of seed treatment or not. And we don't see any differences anyway, which is not new because we already know it from the other trial. And then around 30 days after planting, we start to see those downward cupping damage. And then we try to put out this one foliar spray. We use acephate or orthene for this foliar spray. But unfortunately, right after we spray it, it just rained. So basically, they just get washed off. So we didn't see any differences among the treatments. And somehow during that time, we just get a lot of rain. It's pretty wet this early summer in the Panhandle. but we try to put out a spray again. That will be at 42 days after planting at that time. And this time it was successful. We didn't have any weather impact, and we did see significant differences in thrips numbers. That the foliar spray definitely reduced thrips number, but the effect only lasts for 2 weeks. So again, right, so the spray bar is the control, the orange is the seed treatment only, and then the blue bar is the foliar, and then this kind of the cross one is the seed treatment plus foliar. So we see that definitely the foliar spray worked, but it only lasts for 2 weeks, because once we get to the third week after spraying, the numbers is the same again across treatment. And another very important point to point out is that we know foliar spray works, but adding foliar and seed treatment does not make it better. Basically, we're just seeing the effect of foliar in this case. So just a little bit summary on our thrips study. So we learned that thrips are in the bean field throughout the whole season, like peaking at the flowering stages or reproductive stages. And then thrips numbers do vary among bean varieties. Some might be more susceptible or more attractive to thrips to build up their population. And for simethicone seed treatment, we learned that they did not reduce thrips abundance, probably because their residual activity is just so short, and thrips can be coming in constantly from the environment, from their surrounding plants, and then the residual degraded to like non-detectable level after about 20 days after planting. But simethicone seed treatment can cause adult thrips mortality, but only up to 30 days. And then the foliar spray we learned that foliar spray is effective. That can reduce thrips number, but only the effect lasts only for 2 weeks. And finally, yes, seed treatment plus foliar spray did not provide better control than just foliar spray. I think that's all I have for today, and I will take any questions. Any questions for me on this subject or thrips? Yes.
How the seed training will be controlled.
Yeah, so the question is, what if the seed treatment will control other pests? Yeah, so I think a lot of people, or kind of the idea of using seed treatment is as a protection, right? And it can be effective against several different type of, especially like soil dwelling pests, when they're at the most vulnerable stage, which is just germination. And I know some pests could be controlled by seed treatment, for example, like seed corn maggots, but I don't think that's a problem in our region. It's mostly for like more like it's like moist, more precipitation and that type of soil and region. So yes, in theory, yes, it can protect the seeds and the seedling from like a range of insects. But I guess the question we should be asking is, are those pests really there, and do we really need to be like putting this out just like out of cautious? Any other question? Okay. Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. Just one more thing.